So hi everyone, welcome back to another video. And so today I want to show a game by Anton Korobov against Michael Olzewski. So this game, what I want to show is how black counterattacks white and his strategy of giving white the center and then counterattacking and winning. So white plays d4 and black plays knight f6. Korobov plays c4, and here black plays g6, so he's giving white the center and potentially e4. So now he counterattacks with d5, so now we have the Grunfeld defense. So white has a big center, but what black's plan is he wants to use his bishop and attack the center with like c5, knight c6, and just putting a lot of pressure on the d4 pawn. And what white wants to do is he wants to attack on the king side because he has a strong center, which is going to support his king side attack. So he has ideas of playing maybe h4, h5 to attack the fianchetto, or maybe he can play f4 and, try and play f5. So white plays bishop c4, getting ready to put pressure on f7, and black just continues with his plan, playing c5. And notice that white can't take here because now this bishop is activated and black forks the king and rook. So white plays knight e2, knight c6, and here white plays bishop e3. Notice that even though the c3 pawn is protected now from the bishop, white still doesn't want to play d takes c5. Even though he's winning a pawn, he's ruining his center, and now black's bishop becomes very powerful. And here black can play like maybe queen a5 to attack c5, attack c3, and now black will have the advantage because white doesn't have his center and black has his counterplay. So Korobov just develops and both sides castle, and here so you can see that black has set up his king side. He's put pressure on d4 with his bishop, pawn, and knight, but he needs to kind of develop this bishop and rook, which are kind of awkwardly placed because this bishop doesn't really have anywhere good to go. Bishop d7 is kind of awkward. It blocks the queen, and he doesn't want to play bishop e6 or bishop f5, so he plays an interesting idea. He plays bishop g4, which looks bad because white can just attack and black has to move back. But black's idea is that f3 weakens the king, so now even though he loses a tempo, he's weakened white's king side. And now he wants to develop his queen, develop his rook, and then retreat his bishop back to c8, and then play b6 and bring the bishop to the queen side. So you can see that now he's opened up the rook, he's developed the queen, and now he's going to remaneuver his bishop to either b7 or a6, where it can put pressure along these diagonals. And so now white starts his king side attack. He wants to play h5, maybe bishop h6 or something, maybe king f2 and rook h1, and try and attack on the king side. But black just continues with his plan because right now his attack isn't very scary yet. And now here black plays an important move. He plays knight to e5, an important counterattacking move. So white is pushing along the h-file, but black doesn't have to defend there because white doesn't have any supporting pieces yet. So now he plays knight to e5. He's using this pin, so if takes, then white loses his queen. So now the bishop has to move, but now after e6, black has very well coordinated pieces. His knight is very well placed on e5. He has a good bishop. And now, after this bishop leaves the c4 square, now black's bishop can go to a6, where it's very well coordinated with the knight. So white plays h6, and here we just retreat because there's no danger with this h6 pawn, and now it can just become a weakness. So bishop b3, and now bishop a6, continue with his plan. Rook d1, and now knight to c4. So now he's attacking both the queen and bishop, and he's forcing white to give up his light squared bishop. And now black has got the bishop pair, and he's put pressure on the dark squares, and white has a lot of weak pawns, so black is better here. So bishop f4, attacking the queen. So black just moves his queen, and now white plays e5. So he's trying to block off this bishop with his big pawn chain on e5, d4, and c3. So now black plays an important move. So how would you guys continue the counterattack against this white center? So you can pause the video and try to find the answer. Okay, so the correct move is to play f6. So now we're once again using this pin. Black is threatening to play f takes e5, and then just keep continuing to attack d4. And if white decides to take here, you can see that after black takes with the bishop, now once the position opens up, this bishop pair is going to become very powerful. So let's say white plays bishop e3 to get out of the rook. Now we can play e5, again attacking this d4 square. And after knight g3, he takes d4. So now black is completely winning because he's up a pawn. He's destroyed white's center. He has the bishop pair, and white has a lot of weak pawns. So after queen to e3, here white gives up a pawn because he's trying to save his center, but even here he's just losing. Because after rook a1, black just moves his bishop. He takes f6, bishop takes f6. Now black is just up a pawn, and he has this queenside majority. So once the queens are traded and it goes to an endgame, black's plan is just to push these passed pawns and just promote. So knight g3, and here black takes on d4 because now he's created an isolated pawn where he's just going to try and attack it and then win the pawn. So white moves his knight to e4, which is a strong knight because it can move to g4 and put pressure along the f6 bishop and the d6 square. So here black just trades it because this is his he doesn't want white to have this good knight. So after the trade, now black just continues to attack d4. Now his plan is to play rook d8 and attack the pawn. So he plays bishop, white plays bishop e5, and now black just trades because now after the rooks are traded, the more pieces that go off, the easier it is to push these passed pawns. So rook c8, queen d8, rook c4, and now he just plays queen g5, and he's going to win this h6 pawn, and he's up 2 pawns now. So now, even though he's up 2 pawns, this position is kind of tricky because there's still queens on the board, and both kings are kind of weak. You can see that there's weak squares around both kings. So, and material doesn't really matter here because it's kind of hard for black to push his pawns because white is going to try and attack his black's king. So white is trying to get his king safe. He's trying to play king g2 and king h3 where he can be protected by this pawn chain. So now black also needs to get his king safe. So how should black protect his king. So here black plays king to g7. He's getting off the back rank, and the 7th rank is well protected by his queen and rook, so it's very safe here. And his plan is now to play h5, because with the pawns on light squares, all the light squares are pawns are on light squares, which means white can never attack along the these diagonals, and white's own pawns are on dark squares, which means all of these diagonals are also blocked. So now black plays queen f7, and once black gets his king safe, now he realizes that white's king on g2 is kind of dangerous, because white's rook or black's rook can come in and attack, and his queen is also close, so he can play queen f5, rook d3, and he has attacking ideas. So now white plays queen c8. He's trying to play queen to h7 check. So now black just moves back king to g7, where now white doesn't have anything along the back row. So he plays queen to b8. He's just maybe trying to put pressure on a7 or b6. But now black can start his counterattack and play queen f5. So now after white's attack is gone, now black is going to come in with maybe rook d3 or queen g4, queen e4, and just attack. So white moves back, queen c8. He can't really do anything. So now black just continues. Now he has to play queen d5 to just protect the rook. White plays queen e8, and now we get this position where black needs to continue to try and attack white's king. So how can black ruin white's pawn structure around his king and checkmate white? So black here plays h4. He's trying to ruin white's pawn chain. So now after like g takes h4, here black can play like queen d8, and after like the rook moves, now all of these rows are completely open and white is going to get checkmated. So instead of playing g takes h4, he played rook c8 immediately. But now you can see that he's still losing because black takes, and now he opens the king. And here we have another important move, g5, just continuing to open up files and ranks. So after king takes, queen f5, king h4, queen takes f4, white resigned, because after, let's say, here, 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 and see that the white king is going to get checkmated here. So the summary of this game is black gave white the center, but he just continued to attack this d4 pawn with his bishop and c5. And then he took advantage of this pin along the d file and was able to play knight e5 and develop his bishop to this a6 square where it was along a good diagonal, and then he could win the bishop pair and just continue to attack d4, a2, and h6 and attack white's weak pawns. So kind of the main thing is, if your opponent has the center, you need to try and find ways to play like c5 or e5, or sorry about that, or f6, and just ruin his pawn structure, because once white's pawn structure is ruined, now he just has a bunch of weak pawns. So once black takes all those pawns, he's just winning. and now white's attack is gone, and black opens up white's king side, and then checkmates. So the main thing around counterattacking is you always need to try and find pawn moves to try and or use your pieces and aim at the center. And then after the center is gone, then your opponent will likely have weak pawns, and then you can just attack them. So that's all I have for today, and I'll see you next time.